Have you ever felt completely out of control around food and wondered why you struggle so much? That is how I felt back in 2020, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate. I felt powerless against my cravings. I had gained over 100 pounds in 10 years in my 20s and 30s. And it wasn't until I discovered a real food lifestyle that my life transformed, but I'm still on that journey of transformation. And about a month ago, at 42 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD, which was so surprising to me. And on the podcast today, I'm going to be sharing about what that revealed about my 100-pound weight gain in my 20s and 30s, what the science says about the connection between ADD, dopamine, and emotional eating, and what I really wish I had known sooner. This is episode number 248 of the Healthy Real Food Podcast: ADD, dopamine, and emotional eating. This is the Healthy Real Food Podcast. I'm your coach, Erin Hart, a registered nurse and health coach who understands the struggle of feeling out of control around food and has walked the path of transformation. If you are a woman who feels powerless against your cravings and is ready to live your life with more energy, mental clarity, and purpose, there is hope. Here we believe that with God, a mindset of unstoppability, and consistent execution of a winning strategy, anything is possible for you. So if you're ready to find freedom from food addiction, take control of your health, and pursue your dreams with renewed energy, support, and accountability, let's go. Hey, my friend, welcome back to the Healthy Real Food Podcast. I'm Erin Hart. I am a registered nurse, a health coach, and the founder of NutriHabit. So glad that you're here with me today because in this episode, I'm going to share what I think will resonate with a lot of you, whether or not you have ADD or not. Today, we're talking about ADD, dopamine, and emotional eating. And I'm going to share my own story of getting diagnosed with ADD at age 42. We're going to talk about what the research actually says about the connection between ADD and our weight, and some practical things that have helped me and the women that I coach. So, to be clear right up front, I am not here to diagnose you or to tell you what treatment to pursue. That is your doctor's job. I am a nurse and a health coach sharing my experience because I have learned so much along the way on my own journey. I always encourage you, if you have medical questions, to talk directly to your doctor. But I hope that today is informative for you and educational and helps point you on the right path. So here's how all this started. A few months ago, one of my daughters, I noticed that she was struggling a little bit with school. Nothing really dramatic, just her grades were a little low, a little behind, and something felt off. So I took her in to see her pediatrician, and he was so helpful and thorough. He started walking us through the signs and symptoms of ADD. And I'm sitting there in the room taking mental notes, just being the mom, right? And I kept nodding, but not only for her, for me. I was like, "Oh, that's me, that's me, that's me," as he was teaching us. And I mentioned to him that I feel like I struggle with a lot of the things that he was talking about as well. And he said that you might want to look into that for yourself. So I did. And about a month ago, at 42 years old, I was diagnosed with ADD. I felt so surprised about this, but also relieved, honestly, because so many of the things in my life suddenly made sense. Like why certain things have always been harder for me, why my brain works the way that it does, why I have always felt like I'm doing or thinking about 10 things at a time. And I definitely learned how to work around the way that my brain works. I feel like I've compensated really well over the years, but still, there are things that I struggled with. And I loved how my daughter's pediatrician explained to her that ADD, or attention deficit disorder, it isn't that your brain is too slow. It's that your brain is going too fast. And it really can be a superpower. I loved that framing so much because I believe that so much of what I've been able to accomplish in my life is because of ADD. The big ideas, energy, it's a gift, but there is the other side of it, and it has a lot to do with emotional eating. And that is what I really want to talk to you about today. Whether or not you are a person that experiences ADD like I do or not, I think that you're going to get a lot out of this episode because ADD is a deficit of dopamine in the brain, and it often shows up with dopamine seeking behaviors. And that's often what drives a lot of our emotional eating. If you've ever found yourself eating to numb, to fill a void, or to get a hit, your brain is just looking for relief, for soothing, for pleasure. So instead of beating yourself up for not having enough willpower, I just invite you to get really curious about the way that your brain works. We're going to talk today about ADD and the connection with obesity and emotional eating. But I think that dopamine seeking behaviors will really resonate with everyone. So let's start with the basics because I think a lot of us have this picture in our heads of what ADD looks like. And that picture is usually a little boy who cannot sit still in class, bouncing off of the walls, interrupting the teacher, getting in trouble, right? And that is the image that most of us grew up with. And there's a reason for that. Historically, the research on ADHD has centered on boys and men. So ADD looks completely different in girls and women. And this is according to CHAD, the leading organization for ADHD education and support. It's a primary reason why so many women go undiagnosed with ADD for decades. In women in general, ADD may look totally different than it does for boys or men. It can look like emotional intensity, feeling your feelings more strongly than other people seem to, being described as too sensitive or too much. It looks like difficulty with organization, time management, that you've learned to hide behind systems and compensating behaviors. It looks like anxiety because your brain is always running, always catching up, always scanning for what you might have missed and thinking about 10 things at once. It can show up as perfectionism because when your brain feels scattered, you overcompensate by trying to control everything, and inattentiveness that can show up as daydreaming, forgetting things, or starting projects and not finishing them. So, for me personally, I was always the sweet and spacey one in my life, right? In class, in my life, the daydreamer. I also have struggled a lot with anxiety, especially after becoming a mom and getting married, right? Starting my career, school, because I had 10 things going on in my head all at once. Most women, we juggle 3 to 5 things all the time, right? We can multitask. But my doctor explained that for people that experience ADD, it may look more like juggling 8 to 10 things in your head and feeling overwhelmed. Not realizing what the issue was, I just learned to compensate. My life is run by systems. I have to have systems, alarms, calendars in place, or else things fall apart or fall through the cracks. In 2022, there was a study that was published in PMC through the National Institute of Health, and it found that women with ADD or ADHD, so they're really synonymous. ADD is attention deficit disorder, ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and they really don't differentiate that anymore. They just lump them all together. But anyway, this study shows that women are significantly more likely to present with inattentive symptoms rather than hyperactivity. and that these symptoms are routinely attributed to anxiety or mood disorders instead of ADD. And the result is that women go undiagnosed. We just assume that we're anxious or scattered or spacey or bad at adulting. And we don't really realize that there is a neurological reason for the way our brains work. Sound familiar to anyone? Does this resonate with you? Here's the part where we're going to talk about dopamine because this is the piece that explains so much about why we turn to food instead of facing our problems head on, right? It's because dopamine is a neurotransmitter in your brain. It is your brain's reward and motivation chemical. When you accomplish something, when you eat something delicious, when you get a like on social media, when you fall in love or buy something new, that is dopamine. And it's your brain's way of saying, yes, let's do that again. Dopamine equals pleasure, relief, soothing. And at its core, ADD involves a disruption in how the brain produces and regulates dopamine. The ADD brain is chronically lower in dopamine, which means it's constantly searching for ways to get more dopamine. It is literally trying to self regulate. And what is the fastest, most available dopamine hit in our modern life? Food, especially those high sugar, high carbohydrate processed foods, where 70% of food in our environment is ultra processed. So we are surrounded by this. And when you eat it, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. It calms down for a minute and then it wants another one. It's that science of addiction. Is your brain is constantly seeking for pleasure. Research that was published in an ADD magazine called Attitude, it cited a peer-reviewed study that explains that both serotonin and dopamine rise when we eat high carbohydrate and high sugar foods, and that people with ADD may be gravitating toward overeating as a biological way to raise those neurotransmitter levels. Here's what I want you guys to hear, whether you have ADD or not. This is a human brain thing. Every single one of us has a brain that is seeking dopamine. Every one of us. ADD just turns the volume way up on those dopamine seeking behaviors. So when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you're sad or bored or exhausted after a long day, your brain goes looking for dopamine. And if food is right there, your brain is going to go there every time. It's not a weakness, it's not a lack of willpower or a moral issue. It is your brain trying to solve a problem with the tools that it has available. But here is what I had to learn and what I want you to hear today, because when we use food or shopping or scrolling or gambling or other unhealthy behaviors to try to push down our emotions or escape from our problems, food becomes its own problem and it ends up compounding the original problem and the emotions that we're trying to escape from in the first place. So, using food to cope with the stresses and the emotions of life compounds the problem. Food doesn't solve any problem except for true physiological hunger. But we often eat not because we're physiologically hungry, but because we are emotionally hungry or because our brain is wanting dopamine. You eat the food, you feel better for a minute, then you feel worse, guilty, out of control, sick. And now, on top of having the original stress, you also have regret on top of it, and your brain goes looking for more dopamine because the original problem is still there, right? Or you're trying to escape the shame. And it's that cycle of more begets more. And before I found the structure and safety of a real food lifestyle with boundaries around food, I lived in that cycle for years. I was one of the charge nurses on my unit in the ICU. I've been a nurse for over 18 years now. And back in 2020, I had gotten to this rock bottom place. It was a genuinely stressful job, right? Life or death. I was a young mom of 3 little kids at home. I was trying to be everything to everyone, and I used food to cope. Every single night I would binge. Food was how I would manage my stress and the emotions and the overwhelm. And it was the only tool I had. I didn't know what I know now and what it meant to regulate my nervous system or how to manage the anxiety and the overwhelm I was feeling. I was a really intelligent healthcare professional. I studied nutrition in college, right? The problem wasn't a lack of knowledge, but I struggled as many of us do. It's not that we don't know what to do, it's that we're not doing what we know. And life is hard sometimes. We're all fighting our own battles, whatever they may be for you. Turning to food is understandable. Our brain is looking to soothe. So back in 2020, I had gotten to this rock bottom place. I was 284 pounds. I had gained over 100 pounds in 10 years. I was pre diabetic, exhausted, emotionally drained, and felt completely powerless against my cravings. And I didn't understand why I could be so disciplined and capable in other areas of my life and then completely fall apart when it came to food. I felt like there was this piece of the puzzle that I could not find. So, getting this diagnosis a month ago was another piece of the puzzle. And now I understand a lot more about myself and that my ADD brain was literally craving dopamine and sugar and processed food were the most available source. My brain was trying to self medicate. And it's not an excuse, but this is just an explanation and an understanding of the root cause, which is the first step toward addressing it, the awareness of what's happening. The research backs this up in a significant way. In 2025, there was a scoping review published on PubMed. It covered 31 studies and over a million participants. It found that adults with ADD have 2.7 times higher odds of being obese compared to those without ADD. And a separate meta analysis, also published on PubMed, found that children with ADD have a 56% higher risk of being overweight or obese. And those are not small numbers. That is a really dramatic correlation. And the eating disorder connection is even more striking. Research shows that people with ADD are 3.8 times more likely to have an eating disorder and over 4 times more likely specifically to have binge eating disorder compared to people without ADD. So I'm not sharing this to be scary. We don't need to self diagnose ourselves that this is the reason for all of our problems. But I'm sharing this because for so many women that I coach, for myself in the past, this connection was never named. And you've been told it's all about willpower. And that's not always the case, right? It's not about willpower. We have human brains that are seeking dopamine. Back in 2020, I didn't know I had ADD, but I knew that I needed to change my life. I knew that my relationship with food and my health trajectory was taking me down a path I didn't want to go and creating a life I didn't want. So I discovered that I needed structure and boundaries with food. The past 5 years have been incredibly refining for me. After adopting a real food lifestyle in 2020, I lost over 100 pounds in less than a year. And I've kept it off now for 5 years. But that was not the end of my journey. Really, the weight loss was just the beginning of my transformation. And and I've done so much inner work, a lot of therapy. I've gotten a lot of expert coaching and have learned different ways to cope with the stresses and emotions of life now that I don't use food to do that. We have to replace the reward. We have to find new coping mechanisms. I've learned tools to regulate my nervous system without food. I've grown so much through this challenge in my life. And I really am at this point so grateful for all of the struggles that I have had with food and my weight. It has brought me closer to God, and I've grown spiritually as I've learned to rely on Him and to fill the void with God instead of food. So, getting this diagnosis is just one more piece of understanding myself. It's one more step on this transformation journey. We're never done. Like the laundry and the dishes, our transformation is never finished. But I'm so grateful to understand this so I can address things at the root, so we can find the root cause. When I adopted this identity as someone who lives a real food lifestyle, and I started addressing problems head on instead of with food, everything changed. And my life has improved in every single way. If you are a woman over 40 who is struggling with your food and you're tired of the dieting roller coaster, there really is hope for you too. So, what does this mean practically? And I want to say again, because please work with your own doctor on specific questions you have about diagnosis or medication or treatment. That's definitely not my lane. But from my own experience and from coaching hundreds of women, doing thousands of coaching calls, here is what I've seen that makes a real difference for those of us that experience these dopamine seeking behaviors. Number one, structure is your best friend. This is actually why our NutriHabit meal plan system works so well for women like us. You don't have to count calories or macros. It's a simple food exchange system. And when you plan your food the night before, when you know exactly what you're eating tomorrow, and you commit to eat what you wrote down, you are removing the in the moment decision making. Your brain does not have to fight for willpower against a dopamine craving when the decision is already made. The structure does the work your willpower can't always do. Number two is eating real whole food. It's going to support your brain chemistry. Protein specifically plays an important role in dopamine production. And when you're eating real food with adequate protein throughout the day, you are supporting your brain in a way that processed food never can. You're not riding the blood sugar roller coaster that makes cravings so intense, and you're not constantly negotiating with yourself, right? Having those strong boundaries with processed foods, whether you are completely abstaining from those foods or you're making intentional boundaries with those foods for moderation, it's going to make the process so much easier. Number three, we got to address the emotions directly. This is the inner work piece: therapy, coaching, journaling, community support. When you build other tools for managing stress and emotions, when you learn to embrace negative emotions and not fear them anymore, but allow them and be able to process them and relax into them, food starts to lose its grip. Food cannot be your only coping mechanism. You need to learn the skill of addressing your emotions directly, processing them, allowing them. And we have to replace the reward. So, this took me so many years to learn. And it's definitely worth the effort that you put in, but it is a skill that you can learn. If you're really bad at this, if your default is to turn to the food, you can create a different pathway. Number four, accountability structures matter enormously for ADD brains. A coach, a buddy, a small group, someone to check in with daily. External accountability adds structure when our internal systems really struggle to hold on to it on their own. And it's not a weakness, it's just how our brains work. Number five, once your food is stable, joyful movement, exercise, it is a powerful and healthy dopamine source. Walking, yoga, resistance training, stretching, dancing, all of it supports your brain chemistry in a way that has no downsides or side effects. And for women over 40, especially, resistance training is so important, not to burn calories, but to preserve the muscle and the body that you want to live in for the next 30 years. It's so important for longevity and brain health. And so, anyway, I hope that this was helpful for you guys today. If any of this resonated with you, whether you have ADD or not, whether you have struggled with emotional eating your whole life or you just started struggling since perimenopause hit in your 40s, I just want you to know that there is a way through this. You don't have to keep starting over. You don't have to keep using food to cope. And there is hope. There are strategies, there are tools that you can learn to compensate. There's help available with your doctor and treatment and that route as well. I am so glad that I understand this about myself now. And I'm glad too that it took me a while to figure this out because I don't think I would have gone through all of the inner work that I have had I just turned straight to medications. I think medications are an incredible tool, and I've started taking medication as well, which I've felt incredible difference, and that's been so helpful. But it's also not a replacement for learning tools, coping strategies, learning how to regulate your nervous system. And I'm so glad it took me a while to get this diagnosis so that I had that time to learn the other tools. And I really encourage you, if you are struggling with food and your weight, if any of the signs and symptoms that we talked about earlier resonate with you, get help. I would love to help you. I encourage you to also talk to your doctor if you are curious about what working together with me would look like. I would love to offer you some help, some free help. This month, I'm offering a free 1 hour strategy session for you. We will dive deep into your situation, where you are right now, what your goals are, what's gotten in your way before, and whether or not this NutriHabit coaching strategy is the right fit for you. So, if you're interested in that, just go to healthyrealfood.com/consult and grab your spot on my calendar. I would love to meet with you face to face, one to one on Zoom. And if you haven't heard yet, the other thing that we have going on here, my brother Seth and I, we are building the NutriHabit app. I'm so excited about it. It is designed to make meal planning, food tracking, staying consistent so much easier, especially for brains like ours that need structure, simplicity, and dopamine hits built right in. You can join the wait list right now if you'd like to try it out. It's healthyrealfood.com/NutriHabit. Right now it's available to my current clients, but we are going to be working on getting this out to you this summer. And I will put that link in the show notes as well for the wait list. I just want to close by saying that understanding yourself is not making excuses. We are all flawed. We are human, and I encourage you to replace shame and guilt with compassion and curiosity. Understanding why your brain works the way it does, understanding the root causes of your patterns, that's the beginning of real and lasting change. And it's made all the difference for me. The past does not equal the future. You can do hard things. And for those of you who, like me, have a brain that is running at full speed, that superpower is already in you. We just have to point it in the right direction. So I'm cheering you on your health journey, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, you're going to love my coaching program. If you're struggling and want to lose weight for the last time, I can help you. Just imagine living in your goal body and having peace with food. Your success is guaranteed. To learn more about how to get support, guidance, and accountability so you can find peace with food, achieve your goal body this year, and have more energy, visit www.healthyrealfood.com. While you're there, click the link to my schedule for a free one-to-one coaching call so we can get you started on your success path. You have the power to create the life that you want. This is the year of you. I'm cheering you on. Now go win the day. You got this.